Oh, fuck. Hey, everybody. Welcome to my big turning red video. This is a very stream of consciousness video, but believe it or not, I cut it down a lot. This was originally supposed to be, I'll record this for about 40 minutes, and then I just let myself go. I recorded for an hour and a half. For small things I want to address, because it was unscripted. So let me go over a few things first. So first thing, after this track in the background fades, I'm gonna leave the music off to put this video into full podcast mode, if that makes sense. Usually I put music on the end of it, but I'm not sure if I should do that, so leave it in the comments if you actually have an opinion on that, one way or another. I think people like consuming this sort of media in this way, where they can just listen to it and they can put on their own music. While editing, I used the Wii Shop channel theme and the Me channel theme as placeholders for music I was going to put in myself, and then decided against it. And I was listening to the instrumental versions of Protest the Hero's Palimpsest album. So, pick your own music. I've tried many different genres and styles, and you should enjoy. Second thing I want to get out of the way. Turning Red came out right after there was a big anti-LGBTQ usurp, which is a word, from Bob Chapek, the CEO, who's a homophobic bitch. So the people staged walkouts from, I think, March 16th to the 22nd. People called for a boycott, but the people doing the walkout did not call for a boycott of Disney content, but the boycott got wind of me first before the people doing the walkout actually said anything about that publicly. They said it's fine to boycott, but they didn't ever call for one. So thanks, internet. So for those of you who are, oh, my throat. So for those of you that are worried about that, at least in spirit, I guess that makes sense. Let it be known that I watched Turning Red on the night of March 13th. I finished it around 1 a.m.-ish on March 14th, so right before the walkout. Good for them still, though. Gay and trans rights, and yeah. Alright, third point I want to get out of the way is that I'm fucking angry at myself at this time. After watching this, it makes me want to pull out my hair, but I can't, re-record it. The whole thing was improvised. So I recorded this the day after I watched it. I watched it, and then I slept, and then I woke up and put down the, before I went to sleep, I put down the points I wanted to talk about. And then the next day I recorded the thing and just went with it. And somehow my brain turned Meilin Ling's name into Meilin in my brain. So every time you hear my stupid white ass say Meilin, I mean Meilin. Which I guess you could hear this as Mei Ling, but, and not, Meilin. But it doesn't sound like that, so I thought I would point this out. And point 4, I also pronounced Ludwig Göransson's name wrong, and I'm probably pronouncing it wrong right now. I'm assuming, since I've known of Ludwig's work for years, I think it is possible that he's changing a consonant, or flipping a vowel around, or adding a couple dots to his name every couple of years just to fuck with me. And I think he pays people to help him do that. I think he pays people to change all past mentions publicly of his previous spelling and pronunciations of his name to fuck with me. I can't prove that yet. That might be another video topic for another time. But until then, here's my way too long fucking rant about a Disney movie. Last night I watched Disney's Turning Red, written and directed by Domi Shi, and also written by Julia Cho and Sarah Stryker, I think is how you pronounce that. Well, the screenplay was Julia Cho and Domi Shi. I liked it. I do not like Disney. Not that I condone piracy, but I don't like Disney as a corporation. But I do like Turning Red. I thought it was a good film. This thing is probably gonna go on a little longer than I originally wanted to be. But I think there's more things I have to cover, because right now there's discourse. I was gonna say controversy, but discourse is closer. The things that people are complaining about and starting controversy over are not controversy. It's just men on the line being angry. So I'm gonna nip that in the bud first. So if you don't care about that and just want to hear the things that I do or don't like about it and whether or not I recommend the film, uh, keep just skip past this part a bit. I'll put a thing in like the video description or something. But yeah, the main criticism for those who are watching this later and are like, should I go back and watch Turning Red? I kind of missed out on the hype on that one. Yes, you should. First off, not that I condone piracy, but you should. The main controversy or the main criticism, I guess, if you will, is that the movie is incredibly unrelatable. So before I even go into what I like and don't like about the film, I'm just gonna talk about that. And if you can't already tell by my tone, I think you already know where I stand on this complete lack of issue. So there are 3 points about this supposed unrelatability. My first point would be to ask these people if you truly believe. Well, one of the main things I didn't get out of it and why it was kind of lukewarm to me was because I couldn't relate. I'm not a little Asian girl. I didn't find it relatable, and I watched an hour and a half long film, hoping to find a character that I could plaster myself onto so I could enjoy this story. Here's my question. Here's one question, if nothing else. What about the characters specifically are unrelatable? Let's take away the fact that Meilin is Asian, although that is a big part of her character. Her culture is a very strong point in her character and how that relates to the overall plot that focuses on Mei Ling very heavily. Let's take away the fact that she's a girl, although since this is technically a period piece, I know it's weird to think of that because most film snobs only call these things period pieces if they're like in, you know, like Nazi Germany or just like uh old-timey like I don't know. If it's a new piece set in an old period, people are like, that's a period piece. Well, that's what Turning Red is. It's the vast majority, I think, of the story takes place in 2002. So I hate to break it to you that was 20 years ago, but if It's a Wonderful Life is partially like almost a period piece, then Turning Red's a period piece. Sorry about it. Sorry. Let's take away those two major factors. Let's also take away the fact that maxi pads and tampons exist. Let's take away those factors for a second. So what about Mei Ling is unrelatable to you specifically? Because I feel that she is a child that goes through puberty. I feel that she has passions in life that are stifled by her parents in a complicated relationship between mother and child. I think, regardless of gender, a parent has a certain responsibility to their child, and if they are going to uphold it, then I think the way that the mother, this is like kind of a textbook how not to do this. I found a lot of the characters to be relatable in a sense. So here's my thing. I'm gonna get my water. So here's my thing, okay? I'm not a genius. I'm not a great film critic. I'm really not. And most of what I've talked about on this channel up until this point of releasing this video is like video games and how I feel about those. But I do actually have a bachelor's in creative writing, which I've mentioned on the channel before, specifically with a focus on screenplay, actually, which is an actual like tagged on thing to my major and to my degree. So if there's one thing that I actually do know what I'm talking about in any fashion whatsoever, it actually is going to be how to, you know, make maybe not a good story, but a captivating story, and how that works, and certain fundamental things that do or don't work for something, and how there are rules, and how the rules are absolutely designed to be bent and or broken. So I think that relatability is heavily overrated. Um, because not everybody's going to relate to every fucking character, but I think that the characters still have things about them that are relatable. Characters have relatability. Movies should not have relatability, is my opinion. I can't think of many examples that refute that. If the film is relatable to you, then it was made to just speak to either a general audience or a very specific audience and sell that movie. I don't think that's a good thing that filmmakers should strive for, and I don't think it's a thing consumers should want. But relatable characters are the spine and nervous system and heart of a movie, I feel, of a story, really. And I think Meilin is a good character to that degree. I think she's very relatable. I think if you can't find something in the first like 20 minutes that you can be like, I have a similarity with Meilin or any character in the plot at all, then you're trying to find something unrelatable so you can be part of this conversation, which will end in like a few weeks from now as I'm recording this. The movie's been out at this point for like, what, a week? Maybe? Maybe not even a week. And people are like, I don't know, I didn't find it relatable. And I thought for sure that like this was just an internet argument. Like a bunch of people were just on social media doing that, and people were like, I can't believe people are giving it this much flack. But like then I talked to somebody in real life about this. I think I've heard from a few people in real life, like, yeah, it's just not relatable to me. I don't think I'm gonna get anything from it. And I'm thinking, how do you watch Batman? How do you watch The Matrix? How do you watch anything else? How do you watch Kill Bill? How did you enjoy any Tarantino movie if you're gonna sit here in the lap of privilege and tell me that this shit isn't relatable to you? And that leads me to point two of unrelatability? Question mark? Point two is I am very white, and I do not live in Canada, nor have I ever, and I found Mei intensely relatable. Roughly 10 minutes into the film, and I remember seeing this because I moved my mouse around to see what the time code was. I don't remember the exact number, but it was roughly like 10 minutes 17 seconds or 10 minutes 35 seconds, something like that. In where and I want to point out this wasn't the point in the movie where I was like, oh, Mei Ling's a relatable character. I see where she's coming from now. That was in the beginning. That was when dialogue started. This was where I was like, I deeply, on a personal level, understand this character. Not as a consumer, not as a viewer, not as a critic, not as an audience member, as a person. Aiden, me specifically, I was like, I see a large, gruesome part of myself in Mei Ling. And it was around the 10-minute mark of the film. And this is including, like, opening, like, the Disney logo and all that shit. So, like, really less than 10 minutes in, for sure. And again, I need to stress, that's not when I found the character relatable. That was already done for me in the beginning of the film. Something that happened around that time code of the film was when I was like, oh, holy shit, that hits me hard. Like, her over-reliance on her parents' approval versus how much her parents like don't, or her mom specifically I should say, doesn't approve of a lot of the things she does in her lifestyle, and how she hides so much stuff. But as a child, she's unable to see this is a person, this is an adult that has wronged me. She sees your mother kind of becomes in the situation, for those who didn't have abusive parents, this kind of like god figure. She gives you existence, she gives you nourishment, she gives you... So, for all intents and purposes, this is the entity that has allowed you to continue surviving and living. And that's scary. And it shouldn't be, is the thing. It's a little scary, I think, as you're a child. But I think for people with decent relationships with their parents, decent to good, I think this isn't like, you know... But even then, I still feel like you're going to see this character and be like, this is a relatable character. But like, for me specifically, like... Still being like, holy fuck, like, I can't believe I let my mom down, even though my mom yells at me and is constantly treacherous to my personality and sense of self-expression and sense of self and existence. Despite all that turmoil, you still want that approval. And for a lot of people, I feel like it's not just the approval. You don't want the approval so much because it's a good thing to have, or that there are good morals involved. You haven't thought that far ahead yet. You're still young. So it's like, you're really, it's I think it is more of just like a fear thing. And I think Meilin experiences that and doesn't know what to call it for most of the film, if nothing else. And that's intense. That is intensely relatable to me. And keep in mind, like I said, her ethnicity, her culture, these are big things in the movie, big points. And sure, I can't relate to those directly. Um, I'm not an immigrant. I was born and raised in the States. So I'm not Canadian, and I'm not of Asian descent. I don't know. I found the this is one of the more relatable characters I've seen in as a Disney protagonist in forever. And just so you know, I'm not choking up. I'm not crying. I literally have indigestion. This isn't a joke. Point three: misogyny. We know that film is oversaturated with a lot of male protagonists. As such, a lot of our favorite films have men, leading the role and leading the charge. And a lot of the films that we really, really like, exceptions with movies that are considered like, big ticket things that a lot of people care about. I think of like Kill Bill is like the first example I can think of. And even that's written and directed by a man who is kind of gross. This is a movie written and directed by women, and it's good. I think it's better for it, and I wish there were more movies I could pull out of my ass as an example for it, but it's just not. There's not a lot. There was that one horror anthology, XX, but like that, you know, it's a rarity. I haven't seen Promising Young Woman, but like at least that's an example. At least that's somebody trying. I mean, it's not film, it's not movies, but Steven Universe is a good show. That's a queer person writing a lot of queer characters in a positive environment and in a positive tone. They go through a lot of hardship and it's gut wrenching, but you know, it's it's gut wrenching because they're good characters. Their queerness is a part of that, but it's not the whole meat and potatoes of what makes them relatable and fun characters. So I'd say, yeah, like it's a loaded thing, right? People joke about it and they're like, oh well, the people don't like this because they're feminists, and it's like, no, I think it's safe to say that if the main criticism a person can have for this is just that they didn't find it relatable, it's probably pretty safe to assume that they have some deep-seated misogyny that they need to work out. But here's the thing. I could get it if it was like, I didn't find this, that, the other relatable, and that's why it didn't, like, strike a chord with me, but there are a lot of things I do really like about it, and here's this, that, the other, and I like the setting, and I like the colors, and the soundtrack is good, score's okay, whatever they say. And, but then they're like, there's these other criticisms I don't like about it. There's, I don't like the pacing. The pacing rubs me the wrong way because I can't pay attention to what's happening because it's so quick. These would be valid criticisms. I'm not saying it's how I feel about the movie. I'm saying this would be something that makes sense. Like, I didn't relate to it, but this, that, the other, these are cool things I like about it, and, I actually pay attention to the fucking film other than thinking about my dick and balls the entire time. There we go. That would be cool. Then I could be like, okay, well, you have a point then, I guess. I still don't see how you don't find this character relatable enough to where it's the first thing that comes to your mind. Unless you're a misogynist. And this isn't pointing at you going, hey, if you feel that way, you're a misogynist and you are garbage and you should die. If you feel that way and you feel offended right now, you don't yell at me for it, because you need to do some introspection and figure out what you're doing and why I would even say that. Or this isn't a video about feminist theory in film, although like, eh, sure, but a lot of the themes are gonna overlap in this video, and I think you need to take time to figure out why relatability is that much of an issue. And the other thing I'll say before I move on here and get to the actual, what I wanted to do with this video for the most part, I will say this. I never hear the opposite end of this. And that's the thing I don't see a lot of people talking about. I've never seen anybody say, I love the original Star Wars trilogy, I love A New Hope, I love Empire Strikes Back, I love Return of the Jedi, because I find Luke Skywalker to be such a relatable character. I don't see men ever say this. I don't see women ever say this. If anything, most men that are into Star Wars, they're like, yo, Darth Vader and Yoda are badass. Like, Like, oh, I like Kylo Ren. Like, like no one's ever like, oh, well, this is a really good film because I find it intensely relatable. So that's what raised the red flag for me. I'm like, if the main criticism is that it's unrelatable to you, then you didn't pay attention to the film. You just wanted to shit on it. That's my 2 cents. Except the fact that I'm right. All right. Anyway, Turning Red. I liked it. I thought all that bullshit, all that fighting aside, I think it's a good film. I think it's fine. I just don't love it. I don't hate it. I just like it. It's fine. I don't see myself wanting to go out of my way to watch it anytime soon. But like if I were like hanging out with people and we wanted it as background noise while we're doing something else, I'd put it on the background. If I had children, I'd definitely put it on for them. I'd leave them in the room alone with it if that situation called for it. It's fine. People that are freaking out that saying it teaches bad values to kids are fucking stupid. I know that's not a constructive criticism. I don't care. I'm not a good film critic. You're just a bad parent. Three things I don't like about this film. Let's start there. I'll start with three things I don't like about the film and three things I do like about the film, just to keep this concise. There are a lot of things I could say about it, but I don't want to be here all day with this movie because I feel strongly about it just because of the state of things. But like as a film on its own, I think if these issues weren't so prevalent, that I feel like I'd feel a little more lukewarm about it. That's kind of how I feel about it. But here's a few reasons why. Three things I don't like about Turning Red. First notable thing, its plot feels a little basic until like the third act. And obviously, that's kind of the point of your climax in the third act of your film, is that it's supposed to be an answer to all of the horrendous things and tragedies of Act Two. That's pretty typical of a story in general, not even a film, just a story. But in the case of Turning Red, I feel like, I'm like, this is cute, this is fun, this is funny, this looks great. It visually is fucking stunning, but like, I don't know. I'm like, they're going to succeed. Like, it might look a little different later, but like, regardless of what happens, they're gonna be fine. It's a lot of things happen, and it's good. Like, the story is well paced and structured, and it's not like I felt nothing, it's not soulless. I felt like it just kind of runs. Like, you turn on the dishwasher, it's going to make certain noise, and then it's going to stop and go to a different cycle, and then it's going to make that noise. That's how I felt watching that. Not to say it's as boring as a dishwasher, obviously, but like I didn't like, I wasn't like intensely excited. I wasn't like, oh my god, where are they going to go with this? I think part of the reason my brain kind of glazed over on a lot of this was because the writing and the pacing are incredibly snappy, which makes sense to what the movie's about, what it's going for, and its main character that it focuses on very heavily. I feel like a lot of things are so fast paced and constant that it's kind of hard to really put yourself in a position to think about what you're processing for a minute and then go on. There are scenes that slow this down that don't do this as much. It's still like, I think that's part of the reason why. I'm not saying it's bad because it's snappier that I couldn't follow along. It's just that once once one thing has kind of had an impact on your brain, it's made you feel happy, it's made you feel sad, it's made you laugh, it's made you cry, it's made you feel awkward, it's made you feel insecure, it's made you feel something. Another thing is like, bitch, don't fucking think about that for too long. Here's this other thing. Here's a red panda butt shake. And again, is that a terrible thing? No, but I think that might be like a culprit in why I feel that way about the movie. And it's a thing I'm thinking about now too, because like you'll notice in like The Incredibles and like Monsters Inc., other really good Pixar productions, they like, and Toy Story, 1 and 2, there's a lot more like space in between moments and beats in the story and the dialogue and the script. The pacing is a little more dragged out, so when comedic moments like this happen, there's more time to kind of, exhale and re-inhale, and then more things occur. But in that moment, in that dead air, there's still movement and the characters are moving around, so the world still feels lived in. Whereas Turning Red, like once stuff happens, it happens, and then this happens, and then the other thing happens, and it's more of a stylistic thing than anything. I think it's fine. I think it's fine for Turning Red. I think again, this might just be a culprit to why I'm like, it's not as funny as or rather, not the fun that it's constantly like that it's not as, how do I put this? That it felt like more of a slog to get through like Act 2 than it did Act 3. I think that's because of just like there was a lot of stuff going on, and I kind of just needed to sit down and be like, okay, hold on, let me just like move my hair a little bit for a second, and then I'll be back with you after I kind of, I need to stretch a little and exhale. The thing is with that though, this is kind of like just a general synopsis of how I felt about a lot of the movie. The third act does, I don't want to say make up for it. That's kind of weird to say about it, but it's good. The last like third of this movie is exceptional. I think. And it still looks great. It there's so much shit that they just go all out with how the third act works. It's real fucking cool. The plot isn't bad. It is a basic plot, but it doesn't do anything much to feel like anything other than that. It's kind of a placeholder for a lot of goofy shit to happen on screen, which is fine, which is perfectly fucking fine. It just doesn't particularly grab me. I mean, it grabbed me enough. Like, I wasn't like, oh my god, turn this off. Or like, oh my god, this is camp cheese garbage. Like, fuck this. I don't know. It was the first two acts are kind of, they work. The dressing on top is delicious, but it's fucking, I don't know. It's just kind of there. I don't know how to describe this. I'm sorry. I know I'm like, oh, I'm a writing major and I can't think of the words to put onto this, but it's just kind of I felt like I was just along for the ride. There we go. That's the best way I know how to explain it in layman's terms. Like, for the first two acts, I was like, I'm here for the ride. It's fine. And the third act was just like, poof. But like, yeah, that's where I'm at with that. The second point I have kind of ties into my first like critical point. I didn't find Turning Red to be particularly hilarious. And to call me a jaded ass, fine. It's not to say that there are no jokes. It's not to say that it's not funny. It is funny. There were parts where I laughed pretty good, but most of the things I found funny about it were like visual gags. I'll say a lot of the actual dialogue jokes, they were more clever than witty. I know it's mincing words a little bit. It's a little semantic, but that's how I feel. I think it's the most concise way to describe it. A lot of the shit, like I said, a lot of the stuff that I found really funny, the biggest laughs I had for sure were visual gags. A lot of great facial expressions in this movie. A lot of great shit. I'll talk more about that, I'm sure, in the more praisey positive points. I feel like a lot of the humor of this isn't gross out humor, which I like. But it's a lot of it is based on like, oh, look how insane and kooky this thing is, and it's not like that insane what's happening. People have seen it already, so this won't spoil for you. The twerking, it was good. I was like, this is fitting. I was like, this is thematically fitting as fuck for the scene and for the film. This works out really fucking well, and if they're gonna put it anywhere, I'm glad they bottled it up and released it here. But like, is it that funny though? No, I didn't find it that funny. But like, again, call me a jaded ass. A lot of people have had much stronger emotional reaction to this film. And I had some too. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna bottle it up. There were some very touching things in this movie that struck a very personal chord with me. There were things I was genuinely shocked by coming from a Disney film. And I don't think that feeling is gonna be universal, but it was something for me. I'll talk about that later. But yeah, I just didn't find it like super crazy funny. And, like I said, I brought up Rushmore. Not every comedy has to be the most hilarious fucking comedy on the planet. Like, they can't all be Monty Python and the Holy Grail. It's fine. It's just weird. Like, because I feel like this is, like, that's what this is on its own term. If you're going to put it in a box, it's comedy. But, like, because it doesn't have enough action to be an action movie. They don't move around enough for it to be like that much of an adventure movie. But like, that's kind of semantics in a way. But if I feel like for what style it is going for, like as a comedy it works. It is a good comedy. Overall it's a good movie. I'm not one to, I'm a weird musician. I make prog rock. So I'm not one to say you should adhere to your genre and stick with it. And if you itch the outside of that box at all, you're a fucking idiot and you deserve to be banned from the human paradigm. By saying I didn't find it particularly hilarious, the way I word it that way is just how it sounds. I didn't find it hilarious. And that's fine. As funny as it is, I can't think of anything in the film that like really had me fucking like going like, oh my god, that's so fucking funny. like nothing really did. There are things in it that are really funny. Just not to the point where I like was fucking taken aback. But that's fine. Not every fucking film has to be the funniest thing in the world. Not every fucking film has to be the most tear-jerking, the most action-packed. It's what you do with all the sum of it's about the sum of its part. Well, yeah, it's about the sum of its parts, I suppose, which I'd consider more less of an addition problem, more of a very complicated like calculus thing. And in that regard, I think they did well. But as far as three things I didn't like about it, kind of a nitpick, maybe. Actually, no, I wouldn't consider it a nitpick. This is a fair criticism. I didn't find it particularly hilarious. Is it enough to where I wouldn't recommend it to people? No. I would still tell people it's a funny movie. I just would tell people it's not fucking gut busting, but it's charming, so it makes up for it. But it's fine. It just isn't. It just didn't tickle me to the point of peeing myself or anything. Speaking of piss, third thing I don't like about the movie is watered down messaging, which is a pretty common problem in a lot of movies. It seems like they're going in an interesting direction with something, but then they realize, oh fuck, conservative parents aren't going to take their kids to see this film, so we have to kind of soften this a lot and mute what happens. I'm not going to spoil it, so I can't talk about this point too much, but I feel like how the end themes are handled in the end, in like the very end, like after the climax, in the full on resolution of the film and how that transpires. There were things about it that I was surprised that they did it and they mentioned it. There were certain dialogue points where I was like, oh fuck, they did that. But I still feel like it caricaturizes how to deal with this kind of relationship with your mom or any parent you may have or parental, or guardian. Like after the fact, like, does this mean we split? Does this mean I abandon you forever once I hit the age of 18? Does this mean we can't have a healthy relationship? And it kind of boils it down and kind of, shoves it into a sack of, well, oh, now they're happy with each other, kind of, and they live happily ever after, and the mom's more accepting of her shit, and as such, she's cooler with her mom, and they kind of change things, and it's like this. Eh. I've seen a few criticisms online of this particular aspect from people that like the film, that they basically are like, well, this doesn't happen in a week, this doesn't happen in a day, and it's like that's true, but I get the impression personally that this didn't happen over the course of a day or a week, but there's a character I won't spoil that they're hanging out with in the end, and that's, uh, I think that would take more time to ramp up than like overnight, personally. The a lot of collateral damage that's done at the end of the movie is not completely fixed, but fixed. And I think that sets a good timeline. I think they did that well in the script. I think that's purposeful to where it's time has passed. A decent amount of time has passed. I'd say at least a week. And even by that logic, like people making that critique are not wrong. I just don't super agree with it, I guess. But I agree with the overall sentiment that this big of a thing will take longer time to get to the point that it is at the end of that movie. I feel like the fact that it does feel a little watered down after how impactful it is for a few minutes there, I feel like that is a Disney move more than anything on the writers and director. It just sucks because I think the messaging in this movie sets it apart from the vast majority of not just quote unquote kids media, but Disney's portfolio, I feel. And so it's sad that they really set it up for a home run, and it they and then Disney's like, well, we can't have that, so they water it down to bases loaded situation, or a bases loaded situation followed by a bunt, and everybody on the opposite team's like, oh no, there's the ball. I wonder if my wife texted me and like that they don't do anything about it. That's how I feel about it. So like all the points are still made, but they're shrunk down into a very small container. I don't know. They could have been handled a little better, I suppose. All right, enough bitching, Aiden. Shut the fuck up and tell me what you do like about this movie, you prick. This is lazy, but point one, the visuals. What does that mean? I could probably make like 10, 15, maybe even 20 points about things that I like that are visually done in this film. It's very well made. It's very aesthetically, like, everything about it's just really fucking cool in terms of just looking at it. But let's get more specific. We'll get a little more specific with that because I don't feel good just being like, it looks good. Moving on, the character designs and how they're portrayed in this style of animation is insane. All the characters look good all the time. It's fucking badass. I like the color choices. I'm not like a huge like artist. Like I draw all my own assets and like all this other stuff, but like I'm not I'm also not good enough to where like, oh, I'm looking for illustrator work because I'm not that good. Especially when it comes to color and stuff. Like I'm versed in it to a degree, but I'm not an expert. It's come to my attention that a lot of the backgrounds are based on like Sailor Moon and like old 90s anime, and that totally makes sense. And it works. It works with Turning Red. A lot of the cinematography, not all of it to the point where it's like too noticeable or predictable. A lot of it has that kind of Wes Anderson setup. There's a lot of stuff, especially in like the very beginning, and a lot of sections where they're doing more cartoony stuff to each other that can take place on a 2D plane of existence of movement. I mean, movement, not existence. It has that like kind of more symmetrical look going on for it. The camera isn't angled too much one way or another to the left or right or up or down. It's mostly pretty like flat, and that looks good in those scenes. I don't think it would work everywhere in the movie, and so they don't use it everywhere in the movie, and I think that's great. Like, there's a scene where they're on the rooftop and they're looking down at a bunch of kids that are in this yard, and they're on the roof, and they're looking down, and the camera looks down well. Like, it's not an amazing shot, it's not perfect, but it's a good shot. Like, it's purposeful, it's functional, and it looks good. Like, not every shot, can be the most potent, fucking amazing thing. But it's good for what it is. There's a lot of shots like that. But I particularly like when it's like that flat Wes Anderson kind of thing going on for it. I think it's effective. I don't think they did it to be like, well, people will think this is a good film now. I like how rapid the animation is. There's a lot, and how expressive the characters look. I'm a very character focused writer, so part of the reason I think cartoons, animation, those styles of those mediums are so attractive to me is because you can really point out a lot of things about a character like right away, right off the bat, versus relying on costuming and like how much the actor is actively feeling that role. And voice acting is still important too, but I feel like that a lot of stuff can just be immediately carried by what's on screen. More so in medium of animation than in live action. And Turning Red fucking cranks the knob of that concept up to 11. Like, there's a lot of stuff in it that looks really fucking good that happens in like 2 seconds or less. So it's just constantly stuff going on. I'm surprised more people aren't going, I can't deal with it because it's sensory overload. Because there's just so much fucking happening in like almost every scene where they're not just like looking at something or looking over something or about to have a sad talk with each other. Like, and even then there will be like little movements and stuff that are happening that like really accentuate what's happening more than any dialogue even would if they added it there, which is really cool. Probably with the sound off, you can probably tell what's happening in a lot of these scenes without even knowing what they're saying. You might not understand every detail, of course, but like you can get a pretty good gist from it. It looks really good in that regard too. It looks good. The movie looks good. Another thing I like about the overall visual style of everything, and I'll go to the sky again. This is something that's going to be a bit of a stretch. This is a little crazy. I don't know how purposeful this was. I think that the sky itself in this movie actually has a bit of theming going on. This is my take on it. If the director and everybody involved with the visual aspect of this actually like went for this, good for you. I see what you're doing. If not, that's also fine, but I think this is what you did. So the sky is not only based on a bunch of like 90s anime and stuff just to look like how it would look in this period piece and how characters like May would kind of see the world around them, I guess. What's interesting to me and relatable, not just using that as a buzzword at this point, is that the sky is usually pretty clean. Like if you look at like not all of Toy Story, I guess like Toy Story 2, Monsters Inc., or like The Incredibles. The Incredibles is a great example. If you look up at the sky, it's usually not like one color. Like it doesn't look that much like a skybox. There's usually like some clouds and like a lot of other stuff. Or if it's nighttime, there's a lot of stars. You can usually tell where the sun is. This is a lot more painted on. Like it looks more like a gradient sometimes, or just like one straight color. And I think the reason for that, other than just it aesthetically looks good with this movie and its style, I think there's like a theming thing kind of going on a bit where or well, rather, it corresponds with the themes of the film, I think, and May's character. Whenever the sky is present, even if it's a little bit in the background, off in the horizon, it looks clean. It looks clear. There's not a whole lot going on. There's maybe the sun. There's maybe one or two clouds. There's maybe one or two stars. But for the most part, it's kind of just there. Meanwhile, if you go in a building, if you go in the school, or the convenience store, or May's house, the living room, her bedroom, the basement, there's a lot more like noise. There's a lot more like angles and shapes and other things to look at. Most of them aren't particularly like distracting for the most part. May's room is kind of an exception. Like there's a lot of stuff in their kitchen, for example, but it's not like to the point where you're like, "Oh my fucking lord, look at all the stuff. That's really cool. Look at that thing in the background. Look at that plate." It's there cuz it's a kitchen. But like there's still a lot more stuff there. And you're probably thinking, "Yes, duh, you just described the difference between being in a house with stuff in it and then going outside to where there's not walls. It's very clean cut outside, and there's a lot of noise going on inside. I think that's directly in correspondence to. Again, this might be a stretch. I might just be being fucking stupid here, but I feel like that's kind of how she feels. Because the only places that they really go in the film are like the stadium, which is a more freeing moment for her to some degree, but it's a little cluttered because of how she's thinking about it. But even then, like, it doesn't look that crazy detailed in comparison because she's more focused on the band and her friends, which was brought up earlier in the film that her friends really calm her down in that space. When she's in the dream segments, when she's trying to calm herself down and not turn into the red panda in the beginning, there's a sequence where it's like a pink, she's like on clouds and like the sky again, it's like really clean pink. And then she goes back into the kitchen and it looks like a kitchen. But I think there's more noise when she's in these places of high stress. The convenience store ends up being a place of high stress when she goes in there. Her room even is a hiding spot, but it's still under her mom's control, and that's where she has a lot of dialogue about her own confusion with her own feelings. The living room definitely has a bunch of stuff in it. The basement definitely has a bunch of stuff in it. The kitchen, it looks like a kitchen, but it has detail to it. It's not just a clean plastic sky. Again, don't know how intentional that is. I might be reaching here, but I feel like that's something I noticed, and I think it's that aspect. If that's what they were going for, that's relatable to me. That's how I felt as a kid a lot. Where like I didn't go outside a whole lot, but at least like when I was out of the house and like out and about, that was at least like that was there. It was one less place where my mom could come out of and scare the fuck out of me. I like a lot of the color choices and the lighting. A lot of it's very bright without being overbearing. Part of this, I think, is because of the outline work of the characters. They have very thin, like, outlines. Everything in this movie looks pretty fucking soft for the most part. I like that about it, and I think the colors accentuate it well to where not everything is blending into each other. The colors are very like sharp. Potent is the best word I can think of right now, but like they're not to the point where it's too much, and there's like an overload of all these different colors and stuff. I don't think that's how that worked. Point two, the score and the original soundtrack. The score was done by Ludwig Göransson, I think is his name. And I should really figure out how he pronounces his own name soon, because I've been listening to him for years. He is actually like, it's a weird coincidence probably to a lot of you. You're going to be like, you're fucking making this up. But Ludwig Göransson is like one of the most influential musicians to me in life. The soundtrack to Community, the old NBC sitcom from 2009. That's like my favorite show. He did Ludwig Göransson also worked with Donald Glover on Childish Gambino, which is his like hip hop moniker. I love Childish Gambino because the Internet is one of my favorite albums of all time. 31520 was fucking great. I have a real soft spot for Royalty. I have a bit of a soft spot for Camp, despite some shit on there that has not aged well. Some of my favorite songs, like of all time, are Childish Gambino songs. Louis Gorgonson, though, is also like an accomplished like film composer now. He's award winning now. I wasn't the biggest fan of Black Panther's soundtrack, but he won awards for that. I'll say this though, like I've watched a lot of MCU movies, and I'd say Black Panther did have at least like a lot more of a commendable score than the vast majority of the other films in that franchise. So that's saying something, I think. But yeah, the Turning Red soundtrack really fucking good. My only critique in that regard is probably what a lot of people are already thinking, or there's a lot of you going, "Oh, here we go, Aiden. Go for it. Go ahead. Say it." I think it would have been a little more interesting, and I'll say this for Black Panther too. Both movies would have benefited maybe from a just as exceptional composer that actually understands the culture of the movie that they're writing a script for or writing a soundtrack for. It's Disney, so we got Ludwig Göransson for Turning Red instead of an Asian person. Either way, he did a very good job. He's good at melding a bunch of different like types of music together into one thing, regardless of where the culture's from, without making it feel or sound like insensitive. So to that degree, I think Turning Red it still has a very good soundtrack, a very good score. In terms of the original soundtrack, yeah, the boy band shit is perfect. I feel like a lot of people that are already like, this movie isn't relatable, and on top of that, the songs are stupid. Turn my tummy like you do? Who would put that in a love song? Clearly someone wasn't alive in the late 90s to early 2000s, because, the big multi-million dollar boy bands, that's who. And yeah, it is stupid. It sold. This was the thing that it was targeted. It was marketed and targeted towards children within the age range of like maybe 9 or 10 years old, probably 10 years old to like 15. And it worked. It fucking worked. The songs written for that aspect of the film are very good. To that degree, they work really well. And the way they're organized into the score later on, based on what's happening in the plot, how they utilize that well, it's wonderful. Awesome shit. Love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Very good original score, very good original soundtrack. Even the stuff that's picked out, the use of Bootylicious. I specifically, there aren't a lot of times in a movie where I'm like, oh yeah, that song based on the time period and based on what's happening in this film right now, that fucking hits. That was a very good choice of licensed music. Normally I'm like, oh cool, you picked a song a lot of people know. And as much as like people know Bootylicious by Destiny's Child, like that was that was the scene to put that fucking song in. Very good. Very fucking well done. And it's such a perfect choice because although I was raised to believe I was a man, so I didn't listen to a lot of Destiny's Child. I heard it when it was on the radio. I still don't know all their songs, and then I'll hear songs, people be like, that's Destiny's Child, idiot. And I'm like, oh, fuck yeah. Bootylicious is like, that's the perfect song for that scene because it's a bunch of people at a party and they're like little kids, but they think this is an adult party because there's like not that much adult supervision. So to them, this is like a rager. This is Animal House shit. And that song is the perfect, like, yeah, we'll listen to this one because we're like 13. We're grown ups now. We got this shit. You know, like that is the perfect song for that fucking scene. All right, I'm running out of water, so it's time for point number 3 before I dehydrate and die. This one's gonna get a little dark, maybe a little personal. Just a warning, because like you kind of can't talk about this topic without talking about like parental abuse and manipulation. And in this case, I'm gonna mention self-harm a bit, but it's not gonna go much farther than what's already in the film. So if you've already seen the film, this won't bother you probably that much, but just warning you, I'm gonna go in depth. If you haven't seen the film, I'm not gonna go that hard. The film doesn't go that hard with this topic of self-harm. It goes hard with the topic of parental manipulation and abuse, though, so I guess be warned, that's the thing. You might be able to handle it more if there's a fuzzy red panda on screen. In this case, I can't help you too much. I can flash one on the screen for you. That's the thing I guess I can do. Alright, so the third thing I do like about it, even though I did say earlier the thing I don't like about it is the watered-down messaging, despite that, a big point I like about this film is that there are themes of parental manipulation, that they're there at all. And how they're handled, I think, is good, too. This, if nothing else, is the main reason why I think people who say that the movie is unrelatable and that was kind of a stinker to them for that reason are either just very privileged or very bigoted, or they're just lucky as fuck. I wish, given the circumstances of the world we live in and the world that people around my age were raised in, that this wouldn't be a relatable film. They'd be like, "What the fuck? Why would you think that way about your mom? That's fucking crazy." But like, this is one of the most relatable characters and character arcs in a film I've watched in a long time. This speaks to me on a very deep personal level. And there are a lot of characters that go through this sort of thing in a lot of different forms of media. But for it to be the focus of the film is crazy to me. I think most of the moments that really hit for me on a personal level, I think this is why. I think it's because it was this topic. I was also raised heavily under the guise of like, well, we're your parents and we know better. We're trying to help you out through this thing. Except, for me, it wasn't, well, when you're a teenager, you're going to turn into a big red panda. It was just nothing. It was just, well, once you do this thing that we approve of, now you have to do the next thing, and we're going to yell at you and gaslight you if you don't do it to our standards. And again, content warning here for a minute if you can't handle it, which is perfectly reasonable and understandable. One of the biggest relatable scenes to me, it's not really a spoiler because it happens pretty early in the film, is when May is looking in the mirror and she slaps herself in the face, saying something along the lines of, like, you're her pride and joy, so start acting like it, and slaps herself in the face. There's like one or two other scenes where she slaps herself in the face, and that's the shit I used to do, because my self-harm was very subtle, but it doesn't make it not self-harm. The reason I didn't cut, the reason I didn't do a lot of other drastic forms of self-harm that a lot of people do, was because I didn't want my parents to know about it, and I didn't want my friends to worry about it. So I would punch, slap, and claw at myself, but only at intervals that, like, it wouldn't leave a mark for more than, like, a few seconds to, like, a few minutes. And if I felt that it was maybe going too far, I'd stop. But it wasn't because it was like, why are you doing this to yourself? You should love yourself. It was so no one would know. And she only does this shit in private. She doesn't do this shit when her mom's around. So, it's also not directly implied or anything that her mom hits her. For me, I was hit a few times by my parents. My parents both definitely spanked. But, like, in terms of, like, slapping your kid in the face, which I definitely do not fucking condone, that happened a few times. It wasn't super common, but my sister and I did get hit a few times. So, like, seeing her do it to herself, though, and transferring that into, like, oh, well, this is a tool I can use against myself was very relatable. I wouldn't be surprised if that is the headcanon for this character, and it's not something that the director wanted to go into because it was such a personal thing. This is speculation, of course, but that's how I feel. I wouldn't be surprised. In any case, the themes of parental manipulation, without spoiling the film, the plot, they're handled very well. I still partially agree with a lot of the people that say towards the end it wasn't handled super well. It's kind of fantasizing this thing of like, oh well, yeah, you're gonna have differentiations, but until that time comes, you can still love each other. Like the relationship becomes a lot more complicated after your teenage brain kind of starts to hit this threshold of like, most of the shit that my parents give me flack for doesn't most of it doesn't matter at all. And then, that starts a chain of starting to realize more and more and more of that. It doesn't really give off of a vibe at the end that she's going through more and more and more of that. They have a more. They have this moment of clarity together. She sees something that most kids in this environment literally cannot see. So it's different. A lot of people are complaining that like your kids are learning self-expression and that's bad. Obviously that's a stupid fucking statement, and if you think that and you have children, I beg you to reevaluate your fucking life choices and your parental choices because you're probably fucking up your kid. You don't know how yet, but you're doing something bad. And I'm not trying to do like a bit here. I'm not trying to be fucking funny. Like, you're fucking up your child from experience. If you think I'm fucked up, if you think being non-binary is a fucked up fucking like mental disease, that's not my gender's not even the fucking start, motherfucker. Like this goes beyond. That's the thing. Somebody I saw earlier, they posted this thing that was basically like, regardless of gender and race, I think Meilin is a relatable character because we all had our equivalent to the Four Town concert. We all had a thing that was this exciting dream thing for us, and we either were terrified to ask but asked anyway, or never asked our parents this thing that would be monumental to me and would be a form of self-expression, and is also something maybe I could share with other people in the process. That was something that you were in fear of for some reason. I think that's relatable to most people. I feel like some other people had to have fucking had these issues. Clearly, a lot of people did. I'd say most people did. And I don't think that's directly a Canadian thing. I don't think it's even directly a West culture thing. I think it's relatable across the board, probably. For me, honestly, I can't think of one that was like that. But I would say being trans, I think that was it. I think maybe just the basic exploration of my androgynous and feminine uh feelings about myself being cut off at the source. I think that was my Four Town concert. And I had one when I was like 5, and I had one when I was like 11ish, 11, 12ish. Towards like high school, I stopped giving a shit and was just like, I'm a girly man, is what I used to call myself. Now, do not call me that. I don't like masculine labels. It can damage your entire fucking life, and I think that's why a lot of people feel shortchanged by how the ending is handled. And I don't completely disagree with that sentiment, actually. But I'd say overall, like, despite how it ends in the very end, I think a lot of it metaphorically is just handled really well. I just can't talk about a whole lot of it without spoiling the climax and how things wrap up after the end of Act 2. I was just expecting if they're going to keep hammering in these points, it's going to have about as much poignancy as poignancy. It's gonna have as much potency as a like a Rugrats episode. At the end of the day, they're still gonna come down to like, oh well, your parents know best, so stay in school and eat your veggies. But it like literally doesn't do that that much. It does a little bit at the very very end, but like throughout the rest of the movie, I feel like that's the movie that they wanted to make, and I hope you what the fuck's your name again? Because I don't know of your other works. Domishi. Domishi, I genuinely hope that what you created is, what you wanted it to be as much as possible while still making a Disney movie. Because, wow. Because, holy shit. It's wonderful what you've done with this, and I think it's I can't the best part about this is that I can't say, well, I hope it reached a lot of people and told your story in a way that will alter other people's lives and make them feel better about themselves. It already has. I see 32-year-olds posting about this shit and loving it for these reasons. So you did it. You accomplished it. Well done. I just hope that the overall vision of the film as a film is like as close to what you wanted it to be as much as you imagined it to be as you desired. I'm not much of a director. I didn't go to school for that, but as a writer, as writers we both are, I feel that and I hope that you accomplished that dream. This is an inspiring film for me in some ways. A lot of films are inspiring to me. I take inspiration in a lot of creative works in general and cross media, but solid fucking stuff. I like that it's such a focus in the film. It's not like a side tangent. It's a focus in the film because otherwise the mom would not be like a villain. The mom is essentially a villain in this movie because there really isn't another one. You could argue capitalism. She's a great villain to that degree. I like movies like this that are low stakes to that degree, but they're still terrifying. Like the tension of what's your mom going to do, and I can't believe she's doing this thing right now because she's a nut job, but it's also totally in character for her to do that. I can't name probably like 5 villains in like the MCU that make me feel that way. There are action movies and horror movies that are held in high regard that I don't think are as effective as an intimidating, scary, and antagonistic presence as Meiling's mother. And that's fucking wonderful. Whoever the fuck played her, well done, very good. It's oh, isn't it? No, the mom is someone I recognize. Let me double check before I say something fucking stupid. Ming is the mom. That's Sandra Oh. Yeah, she's good. She's great in this role. What else do I have to say about the theme of parental manipulation in this without spoiling the fucking plot? I like how it's also a theme in the other kids, but theirs aren't as hard. The fact that the tickets are not like $50 each, the fact that they're like $200 each, makes sense. Or we don't need to see a whole lot of the backstory of everyone else's parents to make that work. It works well because Meiling's parents, Ming and her husband might have the money to spare for that, but obviously, like, she does not want to do that because she hates gyrating. I'm running out of things to say, so I think it's about time to stop. Solid fucking film. But like I said, overall, like, there are things that kind of drag it for me. It scratches the walls of the cage of sensory overload, but then doesn't let the beast out, which is fine. I think that's part of why holding on in the second act was a little harder than the other two, but like it's great. It's a good film. I want to emphasize, if it wasn't clear, that the 3 things I don't like about this film are not that big a deal. And the 3 things that I do like about this film way overshadow everything I said critically. It's a good fucking film. Again, I don't condone piracy. I wouldn't dare. Don't do that. Finding Turning Red.mp4 online is a no-no. Don't go into private browsing and look up how to do that. But, either way, Turning Red, good fucking movie. I currently have Disney Plus for free through Verizon because I got my own Verizon account recently, so I have Disney Plus for maybe 4.5 months now. But yeah, Turning Red, good theming, very visually striking movie. A lot of fun, amazingly well done character designs, and overall, just it's a good film. I don't completely love it. I'm not in love with it. But I don't dislike it either. I'd be hard pressed to tell anybody it's a bad film. So would I recommend this? I would recommend Turning Red to anybody, and I recommend you see it once, at least once. I'm not going to tell you it's going to change your life. I'm not going to tell you that it's going to blow you away or that you're going to sob all the way through. But you also, I'm going to be like, you might, you just might, unless you don't find it related. This isn't even a joke. Fuck. How do you watch movies? How? How can you get through movies? How unrelatable? How do you get through a fucking film? How do you get through a 20-minute episode of a sitcom? How do you watch Friends? This character isn't relatable to me, motherfucker.